Hi, everyone. I'm Marla of This Marla Says. I go by she, her pronouns, and I am a counselor by day and sometimes by evening, but I wear many other hats in other parts of my life as well. I'm coming to you today, though, I think primarily with that counselor hat on. What I'm realizing is that what's needed now is a conversation about trauma and transition and compassion and meeting ourselves anew in the world. So, I want to make clear that most of my practice is around sort of identity and relationships. I work with individuals and couples and constellations, which is, romantic and or sexual relationships of more than two people. But for the purposes of today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about trauma and the way we respond to trauma, while also noting that I am not a trauma specialist. But if one is a counselor in the world, it tends to be part of the work that we have to do. So I'm coming from that place. I'm also coming not just as a counselor, but I'm coming to talk to you today as a person who's experiencing the earth shattering reality of the impact of the coronavirus on people living all over the world. So, as much as I hold space for others and their experiences of what it means to adapt right now, I'm learning as I go as my own person. I'm meeting my edges all the time. I'm having arguments with people. I'm, finding myself having breakdowns after going to the grocery store, etc., etc. And I just really want to take some space to talk about that. So, what I want to share is that I've been seeing a lot of amazing things happening on social media. People making amazing sourdough breads for the first time and sharing their amazing recipes, or people taking pictures of their amazing drag that they're, doing in their isolation places. Things about people doing push-up challenges and yoga challenges and all these like cool opportunities to make beautiful art, or doing like extensive homeschooling projects with our children. And I just want to say that to everyone doing any of those things and all of those things, I commend you. Like, what a thing to be doing, and what an opportunity to seize when we have this time on our hands that maybe we didn't have before. So many folks were laid off from their jobs. And I know that, people are still working like myself and adapting to the new reality of working from home. I know for myself, what that's meant has been decreasing my hours based on my capacity. And it's so important as a counselor, but as anybody, it's so important to be able to make space for who we need to be in this process, because we are not experiencing life the way we experienced life before, let's say about a month ago, when all of this kind of hit the fan, at least over here where I'm living in Canada. And I think what's important to acknowledge is that globally we're experiencing a trauma. And what that means is that we are heightened in our experience of stress, in our experiences of fear. I mean, what used to be going out for a walk is now an exercise in hypervigilance and paying close attention to who's around and how to get around every person who could be a threat, or even fearing that we ourselves could be a threat to other people. And there's just so much unknown that we're adapting to, and it's really having such an impact on our nervous systems. And so the thing is, for myself, for example, where I used to have been able to do, let's say 20 sessions in a week. That's actually rarely the case, but let's say about 20 therapy sessions in a week. I'm seeing now that like 14 is actually closer to my maximum. And the way that I space my days needs to look different so that I have time to take care of myself, so I can show up in my professional life with integrity and as a whole person. And I also want to name that, like, there are many people out there who can't just choose their schedules. There are many people out there who have to go to work. There are people at the grocery stores like every day with their lives in jeopardy. And I really want to hold space for those people, and for the work that they're doing, and for the opportunities that maybe they don't have. And I understand that there are people who are now in quarantine with in abusive relationships, who are in quarantine feeling experiences of fear and overwhelm and not being able to escape. And I want to really hold space for, you know, people in quarantine who don't have secure housing and what that looks like. And there is a world out there that is so complicated for so many. But I also want to speak to the people who, let's say, do have secure housing and are trying to renegotiate what life looks like on the other side of this self-isolation time. You know, whether that means that you are isolated by yourself. I know there are people now who are in isolation in small spaces, potentially bachelor apartments or one bedrooms with, you know, a partner of theirs. And no matter how great your relationship is, depending on what's happening financially, what's happening emotionally, spiritually, like holistically, how we are managing these times, it's so easy to get cabin fever and to sort of start popping off at our partners, even though we love them dearly. I understand the world that people are sharing about and experiencing where they love their children, but they used to have other hands helping, whether it's, you know, other supportive people in their lives who would, even the school system where they could, you know, their children would have transitions as much as we would. And so I just really want to name that there's, as much as there's a lot of space for gratitude in this process for all the little things that we do have, you know, for those of us who are able to put food on the table, for those of us who are able to go to the grocery store, for those of us who are able to wake up every morning and say that I am healthy and that I don't have the coronavirus, or I don't have another illness that's not getting treated right now because it's not deemed necessary in the same way. To all my trans folks out there who've had surgeries that have been pushed because they've been deemed non-essential, I just want to say I see you, and I really feel that trans affirming or gender affirming surgeries are life-saving, and these are hard times. These are really hard times. And so there are lots of little traumas in what I was just talking about. And what I want to also name is that trauma is not just capital T trauma, such as, you know, having experienced an, you know, physically abusive childhood, or grown up around addiction, or having fled a war-torn country, or immigrating to a new country and having to learn a whole new language and being uprooted. These are all very big capital T traumas. Having been in a you know, vehicular accident, like these are big traumas that have very specific impacts on our experiences of being human. But what's happening right now is that collectively everyone is experiencing trauma. That fear of going to the grocery store, there's a trauma response in that. That thing I named hypervigilance, that is a trauma response. That has to do with being constantly on alert. So our nervous systems are constantly stressed out because we're always looking around, am I in danger, right? When we're out in the world. Or that feeling of being cooped up and not being able to go anywhere and experiencing that loss of freedom can feel like a trauma to people. And furthermore, if we have historical experiences of trauma or even recent experiences of trauma, what can happen now is that this can activate those old experiences. So people who've done a lot of work to overcome big challenges in the past might be looking at, you know, anxiety that they thought that they had navigated through and passed, and all of a sudden, oh my God, why am I so anxious all the time? Oh my God, why am I being so mean to my partner and critical to my partner? Like, they're doing their best and I know that, but. And so I want to hold space for the people out there who are, whether their minds are racing and you're finding it hard to go to sleep, or you're waking up in the middle of the night and you're having nightmares, that can be a trauma response. People who do have jobs still and are just doing everything they can to work as much as they can, and then doing, you know, yoga challenges on the side, and then baking their bread in the middle, and then making all of their meals from scratch and all of these things. That aspect of keeping busy can also be a trauma response. And because there's so much going on, the trauma is ongoing. And so that means it's not like we can like take a step back and navigate how to work through it. We're literally living in it all the time. What also happens when we're experiencing trauma like this is that our reactions to our like ability to cope with new changes and with new experiences and emotional ups and downs becomes smaller. If we're not sleeping as well, if our routines have been messed up, then our reactions become bigger and it's easier to get to those reaction places. There's all kinds of sort of therapeutic stuff I can say about this around sort of trauma and the brain and neuroscience. I'm not going to get into that. This is really, I'm trying to make this as accessible as possible for as many people as possible. But I just want to name that on the other side of those very anxious, high functioning, busy responses, there's the depression looking responses to trauma. And this actually shows up in transitions in general, because when we go through transitions, which we are doing right now, what happens is that transitions come with a grieving process, because we're grieving the life that existed before. This could even be if you get a new job, transitioning into a new job, something like that, or transitioning, like moving house can be a transition, a breakup with a partner can be a transition. All of these things can have excitement, but then also a grieving period. And part of that grief can look like depression. Part of that trauma response can look like lethargy, can look like exhaustion, can look like a lack of motivation. And so for every time I turn on my, look at social media and I see someone who's, doing like 100 push-ups a day, I also know that there are many people out there who are just congratulating themselves or kicking themselves because all they could do that day was get out of bed and maybe hit the shower. So I just want to really, really hold space for the fact that right now, if you find yourself in a place where you're feeling like you're not doing enough, or that you're misusing your downtime because you could be recording that like super concept album you've been thinking about for years, the fact of the matter is that I really want to sprinkle a super healthy dose of fairy dust and compassion for ourselves for just being whoever the hell we need to be right now. Who we need to be could look like that person who maybe sweeps the floor today. That person who maybe drinks a couple of extra glasses of water today because we were mindful of it. That person who maybe does go to yoga and then eats a pint of Ben & Jerry's ice cream for dinner. Sorry, that was just my real life the other day. But showing compassion for ourselves through these processes and understanding that productivity is not what makes downtime. Downtime is about slowing down. And the thing is that expecting ourselves to be who we were in a world that doesn't exist anymore is really only space to create new kinds of anxiety. And so I am just urging everyone to show up today and tomorrow and the day after tomorrow as whoever you need to be. If you need to be the person who goes for a jog, great. And that's who you get to be, even though, while you made the plan and you were able to execute it, congratulations. If you're that person who needed to like kill a bag of chips while watching an entire series on Netflix for the day, that's okay too. And I just want to really put out there that it's so easy to have these really high, almost like capitalist expectations of our productivity. But right now, let's be honest, capitalism as a structure is kind of crumbling before our eyes, and expecting ourselves to produce things at a time when our nervous systems are totally out of whack is just unfair. And you deserve to be whoever you need to be. And I hope that you have the kind of support that you need as you move through this. And so I'm sending you so much love and wellness and dreams of a healthier tomorrow, whatever healthy looks like for you.